Hello and good afternoon or good morning to everyone on the web conference here. My name is Aaron Alsbrook, and today we're going to be talking about configuring asset monitoring for your business. So what you see here is the ClearBlade platform. It's multi-tenant, so I actually have a number of asset monitoring examples I've run in the past sitting here. And today I'm just going to start completely from scratch and add a system. I'm going to load it from my file system. And you can see I have a little webinar zip file. It's a little under a meg, and I'm going to bring it in. This is the entire solution. Everything you see today will come in this pre-packaged, ready to go. It's going to sit on top of the ClearBlade platform as an IoT solution for our business. It's going to be able to leverage all of the horizontal scaling and horsepower, edge or cloud, whatever it might be, this solution can span across for us. So we don't have to worry about all of the developer details we see hitting here. We're just going to dive right in and go and look at our asset monitor. I do also have a simulator, which I'll use later in this demonstration to show what it looks like when data comes in. So ClearBlade has security on by default. So what we have is everything has to authenticate, authorize, encrypt. So you see that we automatically have forced that even in our first interaction with the asset monitor. You'll notice that I begin with kind of a global overview of the world. I can come in and begin customizing that right here. So instead of being an asset monitor or a truck monitor, whatever it is, I have tank monitor up and loaded. So I automatically change the top level domain. So our end users, if they're operational, can see that label. If they don't think of it as a generic tool, it automatically comes into their domain. And we'll go ahead and improve it by even changing what people think about as they interact with the overall asset monitor. So we're going to change the assets into tank and tanks. We're going to change the areas into plant and plants. So the scenario here is today is we happen to be manufacturing chemicals. We have tanks that store these chemicals, and it's going to be important that we have plants that we manufacture them in. So that's what we have going on. So I'll submit this change, and now you'll notice that in our header bar up here, I actually have tanks and plants. So we've made it a first-class citizen in the actual asset monitor, and now we're going to be able to customize around that. We have 3 roles that are defined by default in the asset monitor. A viewer can simply monitor things and look at events. We have an editor. An editor can go in and create new assets. They can create rules, and they can look at what's going on. And then we go one step further with an administrator. An administrator has the ability to define new types of things. In this case, we're going to define types of tanks, types of plants. We'll go in and define our events, our rules. We'll look at our actions together. But that is what the administrator role does. I'll end the demonstration with something we call the super administrator. This entire user interface you see here, the black, the logo, all those things, how these boxes lay out side by side or top and bottom, it's all customizable at that super administrator level. It's a BI tool, so to speak, with lots of flexibility in how you interact with them. But for now, we'll be a basic administrator. I guess that's not basic, that's an accelerated authoritative administrator, and we'll define our first tank type. So when I look at my tank type, I can come into here and I can create a new tank, and this tank will be our 200-gallon tank. So it happens to be a blue 200-gallon tank. We maybe have a lot of these. Since we have so many, what we want to do is we want to define them as a unique type of asset. And if I do this correctly, I'll throw a little icon on this so that we can see what it looks like. And then we'll also add some attributes. So that the 200-gallon tank is different than the 1,000-gallon. It's different than others. So this one happens to have 4 values. It has a tank level. It has a temperature. It has a Boolean value if it's vital. A lot of tanks are very, very important to proper function within a plant. So we want to make sure that if it's vital, we capture it. And then it has the contents. So this is what's actually inside. Now the level's a number. We'll show it with a gauge. We'll edit it with the slider. This is something that we want to know the historical usage of. Imagine being able to know how quickly you consume the fluid out of this tank over time. Well, to answer that question, we just click the little checkbox, and now we're going to keep a historical record of every data point that level changes. Temperature is also a number. We'll again use a gauge, and we'll set it with a slider. That's also something that we often want to know the history of. Is vital is a true or false. We can edit that with a toggle switch, and maybe we'll keep the history. And the last one is just straight up text. We'll let people provide a label and a text input. We don't need to keep the history of that. That's something that we tend to know in our business. So that is a basic definition of an asset type. You can now see that we can create instances of our 200-gallon tank. The next thing we'll do is we'll go and we'll think about, well, where are the areas? What kind of plants do we actually want to do? And we'll have to define a plant type. So when I look at a plant type, I like to think of perhaps we're going to manufacture sulfuric acid. So this is going to be an acid plant. And yet again, I think I've got a little icon here that I'll paste in so that it shows up nice and pretty. And then the data on this area is a little simpler than others. All we really care about keeping track of at this plant is its production rate. It's a number, and maybe we'll just leave it as a number. We'll just put a label up there, but we will keep its history. That's interesting to us. So I've defined both an asset type and area type, a tank type and a plant type. And now we can go and begin creating our actual tank. So our first tank is, we'll go to the edit page and we can create our first tank together. And there I'll pick a type. Now we've only got one type so far, but we have that blue 200-gallon. So I'll select the blue 200-gallon type, and we'll immediately notice we've got a level field, we have a temp field, we have our is vital and our contents. So this asset had some base information about it up here, but now it has the enriched specific attributes that we are going to keep a historical record of just for this particular instance of a tank. I'll call this tank 1. Tank 1 is a good label. Perhaps for my business, they want a little more information so they can keep track of this. So we'll throw zone 12 in here. Very often we see these things tie back and forth to enterprise systems of record, the name to ID. I might go ahead and zoom a little bit in here to the Austin area, and we'll just throw ourselves a marker. Please don't tell anyone we're doing acid production in downtown Austin, but we'll go ahead and throw it out here. And so now we've got a lat long associated with it. And I'll just submit this. So we've created a new asset. It's a 200-gallon tank, and it's waiting there for data to come into it. We'll do the same thing. We'll create a plant. I'll go look at this plant, and again, we'll go ahead and define one in the Austin area. We will pick it to be an acid plant, and it is the Austin plant. Yet again, we'll give it a position on the map here so we can track it. And we'll move it over. And then you also can see the production rate. We'll have 800 barrels a day of acid being produced. I'll submit this, and now we have both a plant and an actual tank being monitored. I can go to my home page and we can admire these. Yep, here they are. We can see them sitting in the Austin area, both for the tank and the asset itself, or the area itself. What's interesting about this particular area is we can also go back in and we can do interesting things like edit it and draw a geofence. So once that comes up, I can come into here and I could quickly draw a geofence in the overall area, define it right down to the perimeter of the buildings, and you can see we've now defined an actual polygon that goes with this actual area definition. Think about that when we get into rules and such later. So we've got the way to see what's going on. We have the real-time data. I'll show you that real-time data as we wrap this up, but I'll go in and now we'll think to ourselves, well, what do we need to do? We often want to take an action. We talked about this. We have 3 built-in actions already in this solution: the easy SMS, the send an email, the publish it over a kind of a webhook model. You can see here that the action types themselves are configurable. So if you wanted to create new actions, we want to send 6 pieces of data to SAP, 4 pieces of data to Oracle, you wanted to send something to Azure, you could create all of those action types simply by creating the new action type and the data set that you wanted to hydrate and send up. With the action, well, we go next and we think about the event. So the event type is a lot like an asset type. It's our chance to define the overall event that's going to happen. And so when I think about an event type, I'll start with creating a new event type called vital tank low. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about those tanks we have, specifically looking at ones that are marked as vital, and we're going to check their level, right? So this will be an event that happens when the tank level is getting low in a vital tank. I can set a severity and a priority. Those are both very much just up to you. There's no hard vast structure around what that means. It's totally up to the value. It might mean something to you or your business. It's something you can move through into other systems, Service Desk or other systems you might use for support, Zendesk. I can pick action types. So when an event of vital tank low is created, what actions might we want to tank? I can have multiple. I'll go ahead and add, we'll send an email as well. So when this event happens, we might send an SMS or we might send an email. Again, this is where we would go and add the SAPs and other sorts of integrations. The last piece is the life cycle. The life cycle is just like when you get that pizza and it has in the oven and it's on its way and it's at your door. Well, it has opened and closed states. So we have an open state. Also, a lot of folks in this business like to acknowledge that they received the event. So we'll have an acknowledged, it's still open, and then maybe we'll have a closed state. This probably means we've refilled the tank. So I'll create this, and now we have a new event type called Vital Tank Low. All right, so now we've got the last couple phases here is we're going to talk about how do these events get created, and the first step is with the rule type. A rule type is where it's a chance for us as developers, those of us who know the world of if, then, else statements, to build in the vernacular we want our business to use, the terminology we want the end user, the operators to be able to enter these rules with. So this rule is not just looking for vital tank low. This rule is about checking the levels. So we'll call this rule type a level check. We could set a time frame. So if we only wanted to check levels during the business hours of the day, meaning that we're not going to worry about when it's nighttime and there's no one in the plant, we could include time frames in the rule to make sure that people picked 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. We'll select which event is going to be generated. So we just defined that we want an event type called Vital Tank Low. It's going to be a state check. Again, we could check areas and look for things like inside or outside of that little geofence or distance or proximity from, but instead we're going to keep it simple and simply check the level of fluid in our tank. So now we're going to start to put the business domain language in. We're going to say if the, and we're going to let folks choose between asset types. We're going to let them choose types themselves or specific entities. It's possible to just say when any tank, a blue tank is low, let's send an alert, or when a specific one that we've created, when that one's low specifically, send this alert. We're then going to set the relationship. So we're looking at the level attribute. And then we're going to put in some more language that makes it easy to read. So we're going to say if the assets fill level that, and we get to set a number comparison. We're going to say is higher. This means the tank level is above or is below, right? You can imagine there's a fluid level inside the tank. And then the only other thing we'll fill in here is gallons, right? And what we've done with all these fields is certainly some complexity here, is we've given you the chance to, in all the points of the structure of the check and the rule, to put in the words that you expect your end users to understand and to want to use. Now I could hit and here, and I could add more detail specifically around that is vital. So we could check here, which we should want to do in real life. I'm going to avoid that for now to keep this simple for the demo. But ultimately, we're going to check 2 conditions, but this one's going to do one of just is the fill level below. So I've created the new rule type. It's a level check rule type, and we're down to really the last step here of configuring this environment. The last step for us is we're going to go in and we're going to define a rule. We're going to check the actual vital tank level check. So now we're going to use the vital tank level check. It's of type level check. And we're going to say if either one tank or all blue 200-gallon tanks fill level is below 30. So we're going to watch for, is our tank level below 30 gallons? Then we're going to issue the event of vital tank low. This is something that's going to have a life cycle of opened, acknowledged, and closed. Maybe this isn't such a big severity, so I'll raise the severity, but I'll keep the priority high. It's possible we want a closing rule. If you think about that, that means if we want to automatically close this with another set of conditional logic, we would use a closing rule. So that'd be a second rule for us to leverage. Really important when you think about, you have a lot of maintainers out there just doing their jobs and finishing out tasks that they left the office for that morning to do. This allows those rules to automatically get closed and to remove them from the dispatcher or the customer service rep from having to see them as opened issues. Again, automating workflows that typically cause people pain points, interruptions in their day. And lastly, we'll add an action. We chose that we could do email or SMS. Again, I could throw an alert Aaron. I could pick my phone number and say the tank is low. Now there's an object here where we could go and pull all the information in from all of the possible event. I'll show you how that happens in a second, provided my demo works all the way through. But now we've created a rule. This rule is live. It's sitting there waiting to find out how the actual tank levels are doing. So let's go back to our home and we'll look here and we should see our asset sitting in the Austin area. I'll click my actual tank. We'll go look at tank details. And we can see here that we have a level and a temp of 0. We could have an image on it. That would be kind of fun. We also see we have historical data. It hasn't turned on yet. Obviously, we haven't sent any data through. And we even could look at the event history associated with that directly from this view. But let's go create some fake information. We're going to open the asset simulator. Here it comes. And we'll log in. And I like to make this sort of like a web view or a mobile view, sorry. So these are responsive portals that we have access to. And with the asset simulator, I can come in and select our new tank. So we can send both location information and we can send our custom data of level, temp, is vital, and contents. So let's just see what happens if we fill the level up to 89. We set the temperature to 45. We set is vital to true. And we set the constants to be sulfuric acid. All right, so I'll hit submit here. Oh, and thank goodness, everything popped up. The data came in. I think the gauges are a little slow in moving, but you can see we now have, it is vital, it's sulfuric acid, 89 feel level, and 45 is the temperature. Now, let's take it one step further, and I'm going to make sure I pull in the latest data on this simulator here. I'll pull in the tank, and you can see the data there. If we've done this correctly, by dropping the fuel level below 30, we should see an event get created, and we'll do it together live. Again, it's always fun doing live demos. So I've submitted it, it's gone to 12. And when I go look at my events under the status, I can see, great, our event fired successfully. We can see what rule it was, which was the vital tank level check. We can see exactly when it happened. It's got a severity and a priority. This obviously can be sent to other ticketing systems as an enrichment data there. But if I click on it itself, oh man, we go even deeper into it. We can see additional information about the event. We can change its status to acknowledged and closed, so we can triage it appropriately. We can see that I have not configured my SMS. There was some information that I would have had to have filled in with Twilio to make that SMS flow through, but I can show you that in a future webinar. And then I can dive into the actual assets, the tanks and the plants that caused this event to happen. So if I click this, you can see exactly what the state was of the level, the temp, the vitality, the contents that cause this rule to satisfy in that exact moment. We've kept all that history for you so you know exactly what you've got in hand. Okay, so that was a bit of a march through a demonstration of doing asset monitoring with the ClearBlade Asset Monitoring template. What we were able to do is very rapidly customize the default template to be 4 tanks with plants as the area. We were able to hydrate and enrich one. We were able to simulate the data coming through, and even go so far as to build custom rules for tank levels in the business vernacular of our end users. How does all this come together? Certainly, I've talked about a lot of different data points, a lot of different types of sensors. So how does it all come together for you as you want to connect up your tank, your train, your railroad crossing, your airplane, whatever your thing may be? Here's the ecosystem. Here's the techiest slide that we have going, but here is the ecosystem. The ecosystem is a lot of sensors sitting on the far left-hand side. These sensors, from ClearBlade's perspective, and just generally fit into 2 categories. The first is they're kind of local IoT devices. They may speak traditional protocols. Think of your BACnet, your Modbus, your CAN bus. They may speak proprietary protocols off of your legacy machines. They may be off Allen Bradley or Siemens or other machines that had their own protocols that are proprietary. Or they may be local wireless protocols. They could be LoRa or LoRaWAN. They could be Zigbee or Bluetooth. All of these sensors are engageable with the asset monitoring design. In order to do that, you need what's called edge processing that runs on a gateway. That allows you to get locally and physically near those devices, plug directly into them, get on the local network to pull that data in, and that's where the edge portion of the asset monitor runs. What's great about this is because of this design, you actually can take those rules, that level check rule, and do that level check rule all the way down out in the field. You could do it at the oil well, you could do it at the railroad crossing, you can literally do it on the locomotive or on the airplane, measuring whatever tank level you want to do. So that is really compelling because that lets you actually process locally and then ship that data up only when the event happens or only when the action happens that you want to be done on your cloud or in your IT. The other set of devices are the Wi-Fi enabled devices out of the box. A lot of your home devices are Wi-Fi enabled. A lot of your monitoring with other systems that do cellular based or GPS, they have their own cell backhaul in them. And these devices can connect all the way up to your asset monitoring cloud or IT system. So those are the 2 types of devices, and it's very, very important that you allow both to interact with your asset monitoring. Because they both can come in together, you can have the 2 types of devices, the BACnet data and the cellular sensor data, come in and hydrate one asset definition. So this is how you can take what is a very abstract hot dog machine and bring in all the different sensors to get a good understanding. This is how you can monitor your server racks for all the different types of data, whether it be CPU utilization to temperature to airflow. It all comes into a one understanding of one asset. So we have these different sensors. They're streaming their raw, their best of breed protocols, all those things you want them to do. That data comes off, it enriches up. Your events and rules are processed locally and sent up, or they're processed directly in your back office infrastructure or cloud infrastructure. That data is hardened and groomed. That's where it's normalized. That's a big word in this. The data that might have been proprietary off of a GE device now is turned into a normal structure that the rest of your business can understand and you can write rules around. And that's where it's configured and such in your back office. The last piece is then we were looking at great visualizations. Those visualizations, that's where they pop out. Throwing that data into your big data systems. You have a lot of data scientists in many organizations that are looking for good data, trying to understand ways they can do this. This is how you get them that data. You put together your operational asset monitoring system, and a simple action just flows it out in stream-based processing to those data scientists for them to begin to do their neural algorithms, leverage libraries like TensorFlow, or even cloud offerings for big data. And the last is, and this is important, the bi-directional nature of the enterprise systems. Updating your SolarWinds environment, updating your Maximo asset, sending tickets to your Remedy environment, leveraging what you've already got, but sending that data not only one direction from basically the device to that definition, but going the other way. When the person in the field does do the maintenance and closes the record, let's move that back through so that basically validates all the way through in a bi-directional way. So folks, that was a quick overview of asset monitoring turned into something very domain specific to your business using ClearBlade. I hope you found it helpful and interesting. With that, I will wrap up the presentation today and the webinar. Again, I really appreciate everyone joining. I hope you guys found it informative, and please feel free to reach out with any questions you might have. Thanks, everyone.